Good evening, everyone. It's Dr. Shiva Ayyadurai. I want to welcome everyone. It is 10:30 p.m. here in Massachusetts on a Sunday, and I'm sure it's morning for some people, and it's afternoon for others because we have a global audience. First of all, I want to thank everyone for joining us. Maria says good evening. Dima says hello. We have people joining. Quantum Dean of Metaphysics says 100%. Good to have you. Gerardo says, I'm always learning from Dr. Shiva. Great. So today you're going to learn something, and it's going to be part of our policy effects biology series. As many of you know, that I'm a systems guy. You know, there's a book right here called System and Revolution. There's another book called Your Body and Your System. But I've spent most of my life understanding systems, large scale, small scale, all different kinds of systems. In fact, everything in the universe is ultimately a system. Your body is a system. Politics is a system, education is a system, and you can keep going on all the way through. There's the world is composed of systems. The important thing is if you can understand the science of systems, which is how the principles of how all of these systems work, then you can essentially become a master of, you know, your body, everything around you, inside and outside of you, and you can actually be a force for change. Those in power actually spend a lot of educational time learning system science. And typically science of systems is taught at particular universities. And I would say right now, maybe on a good day, about 10,000 people, advisors know how systems work. And these people advise the elites of the world. My journey has been to learn system science because I was exposed to systems, political systems as a young kid, having grown up in the caste system, as some of you may know, medical systems. My grandmother was a traditional medical healer. So I was very interested in systems. And once you understand systems, you actually can see what goes on in your body right now is directly a function of not only the decisions you make, but the choices that you're provided by policies that politicians and the elites have imposed on people. So political systems and biological systems are connected. So I branded that into a series called Politics Affects Biology. And the reason many of you probably heard of me initially was in 2020, I used that same approach to show how the policies of lockdowns were affecting people's biology. The policies of Fauci were affecting people and so on. But my interest is really training all of you to understand system science. Part of my running for president of the United States is that if you really look at what's going on, particularly in America right now, the elites are actually wanting to kill people, literally, and particularly their children even sooner. And the data is right in your face. You don't have to put it under something called depopulation. You can call it whatever you want, but the data is in your face that those in power do not give a damn about working people. They can talk all they want, but people like Booby, F. Kennedy, or, you know, Elon Musk or Trump, all these people are not one of you. And I keep hammering away at that. And so to look above to think no matter what they say, they're going to do something for you is actually insanity. All right. All of them should be in prison. OK, so what we want to talk about today is something that's also in your face. It's been in people's faces probably for the last 20 years. It's that there's actually shortages of medicines in hospitals. And when I say medicines, I'm not talking about just drugs. I'm talking about basic things like saline. We're going to talk about insulin, dextrose, okay? And then a whole bunch of other generic stuff. So God forbid someone in your family got sick, really sick, and they had to go to a hospital. U.S. hospitals are seriously having major deficiencies. Now, you can blame China. You can blame Big Pharma, but it's actually a much more deeper than that. And I did 4 or 5 years ago, I did an analysis of this, actually 6 years ago when I was running against Elizabeth Warren. It's about, and we'll talk about this in part 2 tomorrow night, but you may want to write down these acronyms: GPOs, George Public, you know, Oracle, GPO, and PBMs, okay? That's not what they stand for, but I just want you to make sure you got that, PBMs. And GPOs and PBMs are the wizard behind the curtain who is actually manipulating the prices of pretty much everything in pharmacies and hospitals. And we'll get to that. But that's what a systems analysis reveals. What I want to start today is I'm going to basically give an overview on what is a modern healthcare system. You'll understand who was a creator of this diagram. In fact, the creator of the modern healthcare system, a friend of mine, Jim Coleman, who did a very interesting biography, and I'll show you who did that. We'll come to that. Then you're going to understand why there are shortages, okay, at a broad level. And then I'm going to give you a couple of hints as who's really the players driving this, the GPOs and the PBMs. And tomorrow night, we'll go deep, and I'll actually do what I call a systems visualization to understand it. Before I start, a couple of announcements I want to make is, number one, I'm running for president of the United States because I believe that these are systems problems. When you look at the life expectancy of United States citizens, your Americans actually going down while the other countries are going up. And in fact, all those other countries are going to start following the US in the next 10 years. You start realizing that this was caused by Democrats and Republicans starting in like 1960, their policies. So voting for the lesser of two evils is not helping anybody. And people have to really think in a very different way. And that's why I'm running. The other piece I want to share with you is that every Thursdays, I also founded and created a system called Truth, Freedom, and Health, which is to teach you how to start thinking about systems. It's also a community. It's also a technology. But most importantly, it's a movement to change the world. We have about 400 million people all over the world who are aware of the movement for truth, freedom, and health. We have about, close to 500,000 people who've gone through the program in one form or the other. And every Thursdays, we actually have at 11 a.m. for all our people in Europe and Middle East and Africa, an open house. So I do double duty then at 8 p.m. also in the evenings. And you just can go to truthfreedomhealth.com or you can go to vashiva.com/orientation. I suggest you do that. The other thing is, the amount of shadow banning that's going on because I've been very, very critical of the big tech companies, including Elon Musk, who's a complete joke. And therefore, although they have me on social media, the new form of censorship is where they put people in a digital cage and choke it so no one else can get to see me, even though my posts are going out there. So one of the things you guys can do to try to subvert those algorithms is to like this post, tell your friends about it, put comments on it, click on the notify or the subscribe, because that's the way that we can make our small dent. But most importantly, we also have our own platform at vashiva.com. Okay. So anyway, let me, there's a number of people here that are signing in. Justin Grimes, good to have you. Justin's out in Nevada. Debbie McIntosh is out in Australia. Good to see Deb. Joe Johnston, it is GMO food and NutraSweet approved by Rumsfeld. It's a lot of things. It's not only one thing, but that's one of them. Portugal, great to have you. Got my vote. Great. Thank you. So let me, before I start, I want to play a video for all of you, which will really give the essence. You may have seen it before, but share this of why I'm running for president.
Who would have ever thought I'd be running for president of the United States of America? I was born a low caste untouchable in India's caste system, a system of aristocracy, oppression, and racism. My name is Dr.SHIVA Ayyadurai. I'm an MIT PhD, a Fulbright scholar, a scientist, engineer, entrepreneur, and inventor. My family and I left India to come to America on my 7th birthday. I grew up in the working-class neighborhoods of New Jersey, playing baseball, mowing lawns, painting houses, and coding software. My friends and neighbors are blacks, Italians, Irish, people of all races. As a 14-year-old, I wrote 50,000 lines of software code to create the world's first email system, and was awarded the first U.S. copyright for email, recognizing me as its official inventor at a time when copyright was the only way to protect software inventions. I did that long before I ever came to MIT, revealing that big innovations can occur anytime, any place, by anybody. Growing up, I saw politicians dividing us by race and religion in both America and India, to have us fighting each other while they remained safe in their gated communities and in their playgrounds of Hollywood, Martha's Vineyard, and Silicon Valley. I'm a fighter. I fought racism and exposed their imperialist wars, fought for workers, and put my life on the line against global corruption. I never wanted to run for political office, All that changed when I saw working Americans as never before being duped by the establishment and the not-so-obvious establishment. Across left and right, we were being sold out and made to forget why we came to America and why America existed. Lawyers, academics, billionaires, celebrities, and politicians, elites, Clintons, Kennedys, Bidens, Obamas, Bushes, black and white have hijacked America. They printed trillions for their friends. They delivered crumbling infrastructure, corruption, and racism. They've transferred trillions to themselves, dividing black and white, fear-mongering, and fake science. Lockdowns and censorship, dirty air, food, and water, pushing drugs upon us, making us sicker. We've been sold out. One set of rules for them and another for us. We deserve a warrior with a history of courage in putting everything on the line for you, who believes in you, not them, who has created a movement bottoms up for truth, freedom, health. I've exposed their lies at the right time, never waiting until it was popular. I've exposed their false gods who exist to lead you back to them. I've exposed their fake science of lockdowns and masking and provided you solutions to fight them and win and protect your immune system, saving millions. I exposed Fauci, galvanized the Fire Fauci campaign when others remained silent. When they stole our election, we sued the government and Twitter in our historic 2020 federal lawsuit, exposing in bare view the government and big tech censorship infrastructure, the unholy alliance between government and social media companies. Where was Elon and his grifters? They stood by the sidelines and did nothing. They did not use their megaphones to help us when it could have made a big difference. Now our movement grows for truth, freedom, health, independent of all of them. Every day millions are learning the science of systems, the knowledge the elites do not want you to have, so you may learn how to think, stand up, and fight, independent of the establishment of left and right and their fake heroes. Now it's time for you to join the movement, to win back America, to win back truth, win back freedom, win back your health. That's why I'm running for President of the United States. This race is about you. This race is about truth, freedom, health versus power, profit, control. We've had enough. They think we'll fall in line and vote again for their lawyers, celebrities, billionaires, and chosen ones from above. We choose our heroes from below, from the rank and file, who do what is right at the right time, not when it's convenient and popular. They can never represent us. What America needs is a movement by the working people, for the working people, who are educated, organized, decentralized, and fight for independence from their systems of control. And that movement exists. It's ready for you. We don't need them. We need us to go bottoms up, neighbor to neighbor. My journey, your journey are all the same. It's our time. It's time we had one of us. It's time to win back truth, freedom, health, to win back America. Be part of this historic movement all the way to our victory on November 5th, 2024. If you're an American citizen, pledge your vote now for Dr. Shiva Ayyadurai, the independent candidate for U.S. President. No matter where you live, you can be a part of this. Volunteer as little as 20 minutes a day. Don't delay. This is Dr. Shiva Ayyadurai, and I approve this message, paid for by Dr. Shiva for President.
All right, everyone. So that is our campaign video. Share it. And again, to those of you joining us, our discussion today is in our policy to biology series, why medicine shortages in America or policy affects biology, and it's part one. So let's first of all begin with this very interesting diagram. You may have seen it. I discuss it in our course, which I'll talk about, Truth, Freedom, Health. But it's a very interesting diagram. It's a visualization, and it's really a pie chart. If you can see here, it's a blown up pie chart where each slice of the pie chart represents different data segments. And what is it? What this chart is, it is a chart that was created by Florence Nightingale, okay, who is really the founder of the modern healthcare system. We're taught in grade school that she was the lady of the lamp, you know, she was just a nurse. It's absolutely unfortunate because it's frankly not right to just say that she was just a nurse. Florence Nightingale was a member of the Royal Society of Statistics. She was a mathematician, a statistician, and she was deeply involved in looking at the healthcare system of her day. And this graph came out of watching the deaths occurring in the Crimean War, okay? And if you go to the course, there's a whole detailed stuff I do on this. But what she noticed was that people were dying in the Crimean War, and she was tracking their monthly death rates and why they were occurring. And the different slices of this pie chart by month, as you circle around, capture those. And most people thought that people were dying because they were getting shot, on the battlefield. Well, it turns out that wasn't the reason people were dying. People were actually dying when they came into what was called a hospital. So a soldier would get shot, he'd be wounded, he'd come into these hospitals thinking he was going to be healed. But actually, in those days, you went to a hospital to die, okay? Why? Because the hospitals were not some place you wanted to get into. The hospitals were completely filthy. As Florence Nightingale talks about, there was literally horse feces in this hospital, shit on the walls, garbage. And so these soldiers were brought there to die. And what she realized was, when she did this graph, she noticed that as the war was proceeding, more and more soldiers were dying because they were coming into the hospitals. So she was the one who connected the dots from a systems approach, and she said, oh, we better clean up the hospitals. And so she brought in hygiene. She started, putting in proper bed sheets, right? She got rid of all the feces, cleaned the sewer systems. Just disgusting work that they did. But her vision was that if the hospital could be a place where when people came that were ill, you could test new medicine, you could test new surgical techniques. And that was what she actually contributed, okay? She literally created an environment, and because of her work, the hospital healthcare system came to be. Now, everything I'm sharing with you needs to be put in the context of this Western system of medicine. We have to understand came to be after someone was injured, after someone was in dire straits. I hope that makes sense, right? And there's a need for that. But understand that what she was actually creating was a system of medicine, in this case, in a horrible situation if someone was shot or bleeding to death, right? In a crisis. So they would come to the hospital. Now the hospitals were cleaned up. Doctors would come there. You had the development of things like antibodies and steroids and surgical techniques. All these things that were created in a crisis, okay? And God forbid, as I've said before, if something awful happens to you, and we knock on wood, doesn't happen to anyone, and you go to, you obviously, taking cod liver oil or eating well is not going to help you if, something horrible, major accident happened to your arm, right? You're going to need surgery. You're going to need proper Western drugs in that crisis situation. So for crisis situations, Western medicine was created, but Florence Nightingale really was the one who created that. So that's the modern healthcare system, right? And if you go back as that system of healthcare developed, initially these hospitals started coming, and you as an individual, some of you may remember based on your age, in the 1970s, there was really no healthcare insurance, okay? If you had an ailment, you went to your local doctor who knew you and your family, maybe even knew your grandparents, okay? And that doctor would meet you. Sometimes he'd come to even your home. He'd look at your face, he'd talk to you, and he would figure out what was right for you. So the relationship between you and the doctor was direct. If he said to go to a local hospital, you went to a local hospital. If you wrote a prescription, you went to your local pharmacy. It was all very local, and there was some personalization to it, okay? That was in the 70s. Now, you have to understand what occurred in the 70s was the consolidation was also occurring of big pharmaceutical companies with big hospitals and big insurance companies. These guys were all coming together, including another group, which I'll talk about tomorrow, called Group Purchasing Organizations and Pharmacy Benefit Managers, PBMs, GPOs and PBMs. And no one talks about this. I'm the only politician who's talked about this since the last 6 years. I'm the only systems scientist. I'm the only systems biologist who's talked about this. But exactly, Dima says we had a family doctor. Yeah. And so with the 70s, where you had this whole new infrastructure, which, by the way, I'll draw out tomorrow, what ended up happening was, if this was you and this was your doctor, the direct relationship went away. And in between you and your doctor came all of this stuff. There were insurance companies, right? There were GPOs, there were PBMs, right? There was all this bureaucracy got created from the patient and the doctor. And that bureaucracy, which we'll go into more detail, affected the supply chain. So if you had a hospital here, how did, let's say you had vitamin companies providing vitamins, or even bed sheets or insulin or dextrose or pharma companies. So you have all these manufacturers of all the things that belong in hospitals. And how does this stuff get into the hospital? There were middlemen that got created, and we'll discuss those, called GPOs and PBMs tomorrow. And those GPOs and PBMs ensured that they could control the flow of supply to the hospitals. So there was a time when hospitals directly purchased stuff from the manufacturers. In the 70s, these hospitals said, hey, to save money, why don't we bring these in-between people in? They were called GPOs, and they would purchase stuff for us and would lower the cost because we could do group purchasing. 100 hospitals could come together and they could purchase. But something interesting started happening in the 70s. These hospitals, by the 70s, 80s, actually, the GPOs flipped their model because they were controlling so much supply, they could crank up the price of things and they could actually create shortages, okay? So the GPOs and PBMs became the real devils. You could have a pharma company here, which has a generic drug, which is selling for nothing, but the GPOs in the middle could crank up the price of these things. And in fact, if you as a hospital didn't buy their products, or you were unwilling to do that, they could create artificial shortages and increase the charge to the hospitals. Now in the United States, someone just said medicine is cheap in India. Yeah, you know why? Because people typically pay out of pocket directly, okay? There are no insurance companies per se. It's only starting to come. Most people just go and they pay out of pocket. Insurance companies, what may seem ironic, is they actually want costs high. Because if costs are high, you're going to say, oh my God, I got to get insurance. What happens if I get caught in a deadly situation? I need insurance, right? So insurance companies, in collusion with hospitals and really the GPOs, it's not really even big pharma, the GPOs have made it so costs are high. Someone just said costs in India are low. A friend of mine had someone who was suffering from a child who was suffering from a respiratory issue. There's a very simple generic medicine called Bosentan, which is made in India, which is about 12 cents a tablet. Well, that same product sells in the United States for $25, nearly 100, 200 times more. And that's what's going on. The in-between guys have cranked up the cost of medicine in collusion with the insurance company. So you go, oh my God, the medicine's so high, I got to get insurance. All right. And I'll do a little drawing that I've done before tomorrow on it in part 2. But today's thing is to really introduce you, those of you joining, we're talking about, the talk today is Policy to Biology, Why Medicine Shortages in America. So these shortages have resulted because of these middlemen. So let me give you an example. And when I mean medical shortages, the government has been aware of this, at least in the United States, for 10, 20 years. And they haven't done anything. Republicans haven't done anything. Democrats haven't done anything. Republicans haven't done anything. Democrats haven't done anything, which means as presidents come and go. And they're fully aware of it. And they'll publish these wonderful, analysis. In fact, here's one that just, you can see right here, that just came out. And it's, let me move this over here, start a different window. And you'll see this is done by Homeland Security and Government Affairs. And it's about the shortages, okay? And you can see right here, it talks about short supply, the health and national security risk of drug shortages. And if you go through this, and by the way, they've done reports on this quarter over quarter or every 4 years, or every president does something like this. They talk about it, but they've done nothing to really solve it. In fact, and we'll talk about why, but if you go through this document, it talks about all the things that are in shortage, why this is occurring, the reason for it, and they'll in fact give you a list of all the things that are in shortage. One of the things that you'll see that are in shortage here are literally things like vitamins. So let me go vitamins, right? And you'll see right here, multivitamin injections are in storage, okay? Shortage. And by the way, many of these are, and you can see why, manufacturing delays, okay? And it's been ongoing for 13 years, okay? It started in 2009, all right? You can see, and many of these are generic medicines. Now, if I go over here, let me stop sharing here. You can actually look up these shortages, all right? If I go here and I go to this window, the drug shortage list, you can actually look up what is in shortage, okay? And look at the stuff that's shortage. I mean, this is basic stuff in a hospital, lidocaine, okay? Sodium chloride, this is saline bags, saline syringes, okay? These are dextrose, which means basically, you know, sugar. When someone comes in, they need electrolytes and things like that. You can, I mean, one of the most alarming things for people who are diabetics, you know, let's say they come in, is insulin. Insulin is in shortage. And you can even look at, I believe, vitamins, okay? So if I look at vitamin, some people need vitamin infusions, vitamin A injections, vitamin K. These are people who have serious deficiencies. And you can go check this list out, but you have many, many things that are not beyond the major things that are in shortage. In fact, what's really, the shortages have gotten so bad recently that the FDA is approving vendors, okay, who have actually unapproved Chinese-made cancer drugs are being allowed into the United States. Typically, you can have different suppliers who create a cancer drug or different drugs, but they have to go through the application and approval process for compliance, you know, quality. Remember, the goal of the FDA is to make sure that you don't get killed, right? The drugs don't kill you. That's the goal of the FDA. But if you look here, let me see this. You'll see that FDA. This is just June 2nd. Okay, a few days ago. FDA allows temporary import of unapproved Chinese cancer drug to ease U.S. shortage, and this is called a drug called cisplatin, which is used for chemotherapy to treat testicular, lung, bladder, cervical, ovarian cancer. So it's not only drugs like these, but even basic stuff is in shortage, okay? And the reason this is occurring is because the supply chain from the manufacturer to the hospitals in between are middlemen, these GPOs and PBMs, and they are now controlling the supply. The more interesting thing is when you look at it, as I shared in my diagram yesterday, when I looked, ran through for all of you, the fact that the elites, fundamentally at a systems level, are controlling biology through policy. And what they are actually doing is that the elites in power care about three things: power, profit, and control. More power, more profit, more control. All right. And if you remember, I shared this yesterday, and I may bring that up again today. I ended yesterday in our policy to, let me bring this up. In our policy to biology analysis, I shared with you a very, very interesting PowerPoint. And that PowerPoint actually went through in detail, and I built up how the fact that those in power know how to pay off and bribe government to get the policies that they need. I'm not going to walk through that again, but I can leave you with the punchline, which I did yesterday, and was this very, very nice graph, which I call policy to biology graph, and the systems dynamics of it. So let me just share that with you. So those of you who missed yesterday's talk, and that was this diagram, okay? And I gave it in the system. The elite's goal is power, profit, and control. They pay off government, academia, and military who create policies for them. This ultimately will affect you, right? You'll have some problem in your body, which is manifested by biomarkers, and this results in some disturbance. And now you have society being hurt, let's say obesity or drug shortages. This means we're going to need more tax dollars to solve this problem, and they get more sales of products. But fundamentally, the elites are the ones who created this shortage, okay? Look, if you go back to basic economics 101, you have the supply-demand curve, right? And when you have low supply and high demand, what happens? Price goes up, okay? You can take your basic macroeconomics class. So if you can control supply, you can control price, right? So if there's high demand for saline and insulin, basic stuff in hospitals or people coming to emergency rooms, and you control the supply, guess what? You control the price. So think about what's happening. The GPOs and the PBMs, and there's 3 of them in the United States, are controlling the supply from the manufacturers to the hospitals. They control it because there's only 3 of them. These 3 GPOs, which we'll talk about tomorrow, merged a few years ago with the 3 top insurance companies. So here are the insurance companies that you're saying, oh my God, I got to get insurance. You're paying them $800,000, $900,000 a month. These insurance companies merge with the 3 suppliers of products to hospitals. Remember, the insurance companies get you to buy insurance because under the fear, uncertainty, and doubt model, which is, oh my God, something could happen to me. Oh my God, I need insurance. Well, why do you need insurance? Well, you need insurance because God forbid something happened to you. The price of this drug is going to be $100,000. I can't pay that. I need insurance. So they keep the price high by controlling the supply process, okay? And that's done with their GPOs. So there you go. We're going to discuss more of this, but fundamentally, when you take a systems approach, you can, it's not big pharma, big pharma. Yeah, big pharma has their profitability, but when it comes to shortages, it is the GPOs, their profit motive, I mean, right? And the hospital administrators who are running hospitals get kickbacks from the GPOs, and we'll talk about that tomorrow. So now I was the first one to really analyze this, talking to some of the people in the field who've been doing this, but they weren't able to get the word out in 2017 and 18. I put it out there, but you got to recognize that it's in your face, okay? Here's Angela. She says something quite profound. I had 2 heart attacks. The hospital bills were $243,000 and $220,000. Yeah, Angela. And if you actually, Angela, go ask if you could actually study the bills and find out why was it that high, you'll find out it goes into a black box. You can never really find out. I'll give you another example. A friend of mine who's a doctor in a hospital, there was a patient who had needed this procedure done. And he could do it outpatient. Outpatient means he doesn't need to come to the hospital. So he said, hey, look, fly in, just get a little motel, just get a basic motel for 70, 80, $100. Come in, I'll do the procedure. It'll be like $2,000, okay? Anyway, the hospital overruled the physician. And yeah, so Angela, you should go look at, see if you can actually find the line item thing and why it's that expensive, and you won't be able to do it. The hospital medical industry is the only industry where you can never find the actual cost, okay? So anyway, this doctor friend of mine was overruled by the hospital, and they said, no, for this procedure, he has to stay at the hospital. Instead of a $2,000 bill, his bill was nearly $40,000, okay? $2,000 to $40,000, okay? So that's what's going on. The cost is high. The cost is inflated because they control supply. So whenever you hear shortages, as I just shared with you, and we'll share more, this means that someone is controlling the supply. Or there's a whole collusion taking place that it could be a Chinese company, for example, who has the supply, and maybe their lobbyists have paid off congressmen, okay, to ensure that the FDA says, okay, let's overrule that for now. Let's get that supply in. And that company makes a ton of money. You see, it is ultimately comes down to power, profit, and control. When Trump was in power, he didn't do anything about GPOs and PBMs. Obama didn't do anything. Clinton didn't do anything. None of these people do anything to actually ensure that working people can live a decent life. And that's why when you connect all the dots, you come down to one conclusion. And that conclusion is those in power want to kill you. And they want to kill your children even faster. That's why the curve that I shared with you when I launched my campaign for president, makes it amply clear. This is not some conspiracy. It's in black and white. As I've kept sharing that graph over and over and over again, and we'll keep sharing that graph over and over again. And that graph succinctly shows what's going on. And let me do that again as we sort of close this out, because again, tomorrow I'll be literally going into detail and showing you exactly why these prices are so high. Okay, this is just the first preview. But if you look at this graph, as I've shared before, this is what's going on. All these lines represent life expectancy rates in the industrialized nations. But this gray line represents the average of all the industrialized nations. Now look at the US. Because of the policies that started in 1960 and 70, starting in 1980, the US deviates. It's not going up, right? It's going in this direction, in this direction. It starts going downward. And look what happens. When right before COVID hit, it was actually going down, and it came massively down. And in fact, it's still going down. What this means is that your children in the United States are going to live less than you. This is a downward spiral that's occurring, and it's in black and white. And I'll keep talking about this graph because this is what's going on. They want to kill you. It's that simple. They do not care about everyday people. And forget what they say, forget what Trump says, forget what Obama says, forget what Booby effing Kennedy says, forget what all these people say. They're elites. They live in Malibu. They have access to organic food. They live among their circles. They get the best food. They get the best treatments. Go to academics. Academics get the best insurance. Okay, and they don't pay anything for it. It's all government funded. Our tax dollars fund these academics' insurance. We need a systems overhaul. That's why I'm running for president. We need a systems overhaul where you start learning the science of systems to understand how you are getting screwed and what is your way out of it. That is the only way forward. There's no other way to think you're going to vote your way or choose a lesser of two evils. Because what happens when you choose the lesser of two evils? You get this. Choosing the lesser of two evils is why we're here. And I'm here to tell you that the reason I care is because I'm one of you. These people do not care about the suffering of everyday people. It's that simple. Don't think they do. They do not care. Because if they did, you wouldn't have this downward spiral. You wouldn't have insulin shortages. You wouldn't have saline shortages. You wouldn't have bedpan shortages. You have massive shortages in U.S. hospitals because the supply is being controlled so the price can go up. So you go buy insurance. Okay? And there is no Messiah going to solve this. Even God ultimately wants to see, what are you going to do? Okay? Prayer is good. Believing in God is great. But what will you do? Remember, there's 8 billion people on this planet. There's more of us than them. Why is it we consistently keep looking upward? Why is it we think they're going to solve our problems? They're not. We have to solve our problems. I'll be right back. I just want to inspire you to know that there is a solution, and we have to grow the movement for truth, freedom, and health, which we've built. Support our campaign. And all of you, we've created the infrastructure, truth, freedom, and health, so all of you can take care of your health. We have a community, and we can figure out how to win. We've created that movement. So
we have allowed our country to be taken over from within, and the end goal is you will have a homogenized world where we will become slaves, because there is a condition among the elites that really thinks they're better than you, deep down inside them, that you don't deserve the freedoms you have. They don't. This reality is what people need to wake up to, and we need to all unite, working people. There's only one movement that can do that, and that is the movement that we started creating here in Massachusetts, the movement for truth, freedom, and health. Look, I've been a student of politics since I was a 4-year-old kid, studying revolutionary movements, left wing, right wing. There's a physics, there's a nuclear science to destroying the establishment. To build a bridge, you need to understand Newton's equation. You need to understand the laws of gravity. You need to understand Poisson's ratio. There is a way to build a revolution. And that's why I put this together. My goal is to train an army of truth, freedom, and health leaders. We don't need followers like social media. We need leaders, but they need training because the educational system does not teach them history, nothing. So in 3 hours, that's what I've started doing. That's the solution.
Wow.
We got to train people first with understanding what a system is, the dynamics of all systems that affect nature. The second is understanding the interconnection between truth, freedom, and health. Freedom is the ability to move freely, communicate freely, talk freely. Without freedom, you cannot convert ideas, hypothesis into truth, which is science. And without freedom, you can't really get to truth. And without truth, you make up fake problems and fake solutions, which means you destroy our health. And without health, which is the infrastructure of us and our body, you can't fight for freedom. Truth, freedom, health. Third concept is it has to be bottoms up. Working people, people who work uniting. And what the right wing has done is whenever you say working people unite, that must be communist. Meanwhile, they've let the Democrats run unions, which suppress workers. Completely corrupt. But when you look at the arc of American history, it's been when working people came up. We need to go local. Every solution I'm coming up with as a part of this movement, we're giving the science, which is the truth, and then we tell people what they can do on the ground. Like with election fraud, you don't need to wait for some lawyer. Our goal is to train people to go local, to go local, to go local, fight locally. Forget lawyers, forget politicians, forget celebrities. You got to learn politics, and there is a science to it. They lock us down, we should be ready to shut them down. And the fourth part of this principle is the not so obvious establishment. So when you look at a system, there's always something that disturbs you from getting to your goal. Well, the biggest disturbance is the not so obvious establishment, which are those people who claim they're for you, on the left and the right. The Al Sharptons who tell black people I'm for you. The Tucker Carlsons. Do you think any true anti-establishment person will ever be on Fox or CNN? I don't think so. They both mislead working people back into the establishment. Without this solid understanding of political physics and theory, you're screwed. You're going to follow on the left wing, Bernie Sanders. Oh, he said something. Or Robert Kennedy. Scumbags. Or you're going to follow some right-wing talk show host. They're not going to lead us to liberation. It's us. We're building a bottoms-up movement. And that political physics, it's a nuclear science of change. Bottoms up. We have to organize to understand that there is people who talk a good game and then look at what they actually do, left and right. I'm sorry, Sean Hannity may say some good things, but I don't see the urgency in his voice to get something done. And it can only come when you weaponize yourself with the right knowledge. You need to be able to identify a rat. You know, Christ didn't go after the Romans, right? It was the Pharisees and the Sadducees who screwed him up. His own quote-unquote people. And that's where we're at. So these four concepts I've built into a curriculum where people can go to truthfreedomhealth.com, and it's an educational program. We need to train people in political theory. You need to have physics, and I've created that curriculum. People need to get educated. We need to get educated fast. And within a half an hour, I can teach people. 2 years of MIT control systems, I teach people those concepts. Then I apply it, anyone can understand it. And then you say, oh, I got to build a bottoms-up movement. They have to get politically astute, and then they have to go locally and act, not sit there on social media. They have to act locally, defy locally, do civil obedience locally, but with knowledge on how to build a movement. And the Senate campaign's expanded to the movement for truth, freedom, and health, and they can find it on truthfreedomhealth.com, so people can sign in, they can get access to a bunch of videos. If they want to take a course and become a truth, freedom, health leader, I offer a full scholarship there, but we want people to make a commitment that they'll study, that they'll get certified, that they'll go do activities on the ground. So go to truthfreedomhealth.com.
Tomorrow, I will go into detail showing you the actual systems diagram. You know, I used to teach a class at MIT called Systems Visualization, but you will really understand in detail how these GPOs and PBMs, which are really the devils who are controlling the supply, are doing it. And I'll also talk to you about a solution, a true healthcare solution that solves all of this. So it's not only we're going to understand what the real problem is, but the real solution. And in closing, I want all of you to take some action. You can go to shivaforpresident.com. You can volunteer. If you want to give money, you can. But let me just make something very clear. I can't understand why billionaires need donations. In my view, if you give me something, the reciprocity is I want to give you something back. It's not like, oh, vote for me in 2024. What I'll give you back if you go to the site is that I actually give you, commensurate to what you donate, a whole value of courses and content and books even, because I want you to learn. My great-grandfather said the biggest gift is knowledge. So, and you don't have to pay anything, but get involved. That's on the campaign side. Also go to truthfreedomhealth.com, come to our orientation, and become a Truth, Freedom, and Health warrior. Every Thursdays at 8 p.m. I also do an open house where we're training people on how to take care of their bodies. We're training people on how to buy local foods. We're training people on how to think. We're giving people the 7 secrets of innovation so you can start your own business. We're also teaching people how to take care of their own families and how to maintain finances. We're actually doing stuff here and now. It's not like when we win the presidency. So this is a movement. So get involved. They're not going to do anything for us. As I shared earlier, they want to kill you. Because if they didn't want to kill you, why is the data like this? Okay? If they didn't want to kill you, why is it like this? The reality is it takes a lot for everyday working people, because most of us are good people. We're not into power, profit, and control. We're into truth, freedom, health, right? Because we're good people, we think everyone else is good. Kennedy's a scumbag. Robert Booby, as I call him, Booby F. and Kennedy, supported lockdowns in 2020. Now all the elites promote him as though he's a fighter. They steal all of our material. Elon Musk is another big scumbag. He hates free speech. He just was in China and he said China and the United States are connected as conjoined twins. We have the same interests. That's not true. When he says we have the same interests, he's saying he and the Chinese elites and the US elites have the same interests. So please wake up, recognize that the only person who's going to save you so you can live long and prosper your children is us. And I'm one of you. That's why I'm bringing this up. No other candidate is talking about this graph. And if they do, it's to mimic me. So to manipulate people. But we have to recognize that it's time that we build our own movement. We've built that movement of Truth, Freedom, Health. And the vehicle of the Shiva for President campaign gives you an opportunity to participate. So, you don't say, well, who do we vote for president? Well, you vote for me, okay? And you vote for us. And that's what our movement is. So anyway, tomorrow we'll start a little bit early, probably about 8:45 p.m. EST, but we'll literally go through the entire systems analysis, and you will have a diagram that literally shows you how the insurance companies, how the big hospitals, and these people called GPOs are manipulating price. And no politician wants to address this. The first thing I will do, one of the first things, is I will sign an executive order to end GPOs and PBMs. It should be illegal what they're doing. It's complete insider trading, okay? But no other politician will do that because they're not independent. This is a key. I am truly independent. I don't know anything to the left. I don't know anything to the right. I don't owe anything to Democrats and Republicans. And this is why they shadow ban us, because I'm not in one of their camps. Neither is our movement. So get involved, ShivaForPresident.com, TruthFreedomHealth.com. Become a warrior scholar. Support this phenomenally growing movement. Nearly 500 million people in the world know we exist, so they can't hide us. We have nearly 500,000 warrior scholars. Become one, but it's really up to us. No one else is going to save us. Unfortunately, there is no Messiah coming tomorrow to help us. We have to do this. Thank you, everyone. Be the light, and have a good night.